Greetings. I am considerably less jet lagged this week. It has only taken me about 2 weeks to accustom myself to being on the opposite side of the world. And this circumstance doesn't do much to distance me from my regular challenges in the laboratory. So I tend to grapple with a lot of restlessness, anxiety, doubt, these sorts of things these days. Getting caught in conceptual mind, spinning around. So I had this very cool experience this week. There's an open rooftop on this building, and I took a canvas out there. It's very hot here, and I'm not really one for direct sunlight and whatnot, so there was a day when it was a little cooler and I waited for the evening, and I had this big roll of canvas that I had ordered, and I just took it up there. And these days my assignment to myself is to orient to painting as a dreaming practice, which to me translates into really, I don't like the word mindfulness, but sometimes the cliches just come in, It's a practice of attending to what's actually going on. And this is elusive. I mean, as far as I understand, this is the whole point of meditation. Meditation is how to get good at being present within your life. It's not about becoming adept at meditation or becoming enlightened or any of these goals. It's about learning to reside with what is. And so I have been interested in the elusive objective of having my painting practice and my whatever I'm practicing be a way of coming into relationship with the difficult, and specifically the difficult states of mind that I encounter, because as it is also said, it's easy to practice when you feel like it, but it's most important to practice when there's resistance and you don't feel like it. And it's a tricky fine line, because for years I can also personally be very good at the inner disciplinarian, meaning the punishing kind of inner parental unit. And what that creates, as externally it creates, is if you try to lord over the playful and spontaneous and intuitive part of you, that part will rebel. And so that's what I've been up against in a major way over the last 1.5 or 2 years, after a good maybe 4 years or more of disciplining myself to show up and be an artist and put in the hours. So essentially I found that I was being far too rigid, and it was crushing and killing and suffocating and murdering my internal muses. So anyway, fast forward to now, and there's good reason, because these states of mind that I was avoiding were and are frightening to me on many different levels. Intimidating, I habitually have avoided them my entire life. It's deep stuff. So I'm going very gently, and that also means having a very light touch and attending, it's just a subtler and subtler project of learning what is too much, where's that edge, where's the razor's edge, as it were. That's a cliche for a reason. What's too far? What shuts you down and creates that resistance that then actually shuts the work down and shuts the creativity down? And when is it important to stay with it? So that's what I was working with the other day. I was having this experience of extreme claustrophobia, which I am often haunted by, no matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing. traditionally my only remedy is to go out and be very physically active outside when it gets very intense. And in my current circumstances and in various other times during my life, this is not always possible. So, and not only that, but if I'm always checking out to go for a run or whatever it is outside, then what's happening with that creative energy? What's happening with my studio or my laboratory practice? What's happening to my artist practice if my impulse is always to just hit the eject button and go and run it off? It's valid, but running it off is valid, but you see what I mean? The energy is I'm running from it in a certain way. So this is what I came down to. So this claustrophobia was upon me, and it often makes me very, it brings on a feeling of despair. How do I get out of here? Why am I in this situation? A habit of blaming myself, which is another thing to look out for. A friend of mine who's also a yogic teacher has emphasized for me, you've got to find the end of blaming. And if you really consider that statement, there are so many subtle ways in which we are constantly blaming. There's also not a koan, it's in the Buddhist tradition. It's escaping me right now, but the term is drive all blames into one. Another way of saying, recognize when you're blaming. And it doesn't matter if you're blaming the other person or blaming yourself. It all kind of comes down to the same shutting down and resisting and saying no to what you're actually experiencing. So again, I was in this state. It's very intense. All I want to do is escape. All I want is a distraction. Over the years, I've also used substances in the past to try to escape this. So this time, and it's not the only time, but this time I took this canvas up onto the rooftop, and I began with just one color and making marks. So beginning very, very simply and with an extreme limitation of materials and extreme limitation of choices. Again, this is something that I have come to know about myself, that I get overwhelmed with having too many choices. Even though I resist having a limited amount of choices, it's actually helpful if I can stay with it. It helps to open things up a little bit more quickly when it comes down to it, if I can manage to stay with the limitation. And because I was climbing up a ladder to the rooftop, that limitation was reinforced. And so I eventually added a second color, and I added some kind of charcoal. And part of this practice is also not aiming to make any good work. Just let it be ugly, let it be unknown where this is leading, really process oriented. And for me also, it's critical not to be looking at the clock. How long or how short? You have to go this long, otherwise it's not valid, etc., etc. The clock time, one of my favorite authors, Jeanette, Winterson, has mentioned that the clock time, chronos, I think, is the other word for it, kills the creative spirit if you're always looking at your clock and measuring. It's that analytical mind. So I just let it go, and it was maybe about an hour, but right, that's just to give you an idea. I just moved around, and it's an open space. So for me, having a place to have that physicality, have a place for expression is really important in my laboratory, in my studio. Eventually, it got dark. So there was an external imposition of a limitation. I didn't have lights out there. So I transitioned into just movement, and the wind was up a little bit, which tends to help me to settle. If the external environment is stormy, I feel more peace. And it took, about, I don't know, it was a progression of experience, but little by little, that feeling of horrible claustrophobia was replaced by this feeling of curiosity, interest, immersion in what I was doing. And eventually it ended in me just sitting in stillness. But towards the end, I really realized that one of the most important things, or perhaps the most important thing in my particular practice, creative process, is coming back into rhythm with the cosmos, with myself, but the two come together. So being out in nature makes this a lot easier for me sometimes. If there's mosquitoes all over the place, then it's a moot point. But having some contact with nature, but nature can be the body too. And I think the emphasis here, the discovery, the reminder that I'm giving to myself is that this is hard, it's difficult. You have to choose to show up. You have to, over time, develop and discern what type of framework works for you. How light of a touch? When do you lean in? And when do you challenge yourself to stay? Another parameter that I've heard that I use quite frequently is if I have the impulse to leave or to, do something else, give it at least another 3 times. Just, can we wait for just a little while longer and see if I can work through it and stay with it? And then if it keeps, once it becomes exhausting, once it becomes a fight, a tug of war, then okay, put it away and be grateful for yourself for showing up. But again, it really is, I think if my creative practice can be about simply being willing to show up despite and in spite of whatever difficult state of mind I'm in, without force, without strong-arming it, without having the boss man say, you will do this. This is the delicate balance. Then there is an opportunity. And I think part of the difference, part of the way that you can tell is that something does shift and something does open up. If there is a gentle application of intent, things will still be moving. It doesn't become rigid. Once it becomes physically rigid, and that's an easy way to discern it too. Once it becomes a physical battle with yourself, once you're tensing up, once you're not enjoying anymore, then at least in the realm of the arts, beauty starts to become suffocated. So, of course, a day or a few hours later, I was re-encountering this discontent again, this restlessness, and I was remembering this term divine discontent that I was kind of thinking, where'd that come from? And it's from this very well-known Martha Graham quote, which I will read. And there's something really brilliant about that particular articulation of, it's not just discontent, it's divine discontent. So for me, that translates into, it can be trusted. Not only can it be trusted, but it has a critical place. There is something there that is trustworthy. And naming it that also kind of takes the pressure off in my head of, oh, something's wrong. That's my knee-jerk reaction. I feel discontent, something's wrong, I've done something wrong. Who created this horrible life that I'm living? Oh, I did. Oh, fault, blame. And instead, it's kind of like, no, as Martha Graham says, this is the situation that as an artist, as a creator, as a human being really, that you're in as an inspired human being. So her quote, so she was having a conversation with Agnes de Mille, who's another choreographer. Martha Graham is a dancer, choreographer, famous. And So Agnes de Mille had sat down with her, and they were having a soda or something, and de Mille says, "I confess that I had a burning desire to be excellent, but no faith that I could be." Martha said to me very quietly, "There is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium, and it will be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how valuable, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours, clearly and directly, to keep the channel open. You do not even have to believe in yourself or your work. You have to keep yourself open and aware to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open." So this is the key point for me. You have to keep yourself open and aware to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open. So for me, there's a lot of spinning I've been plagued by my entire life. Is this the right thing? Is this the right medium? And in this process, however it is that you facilitate it for yourself right now, of dropping in and being willing to relate to this divine discontent, in dropping in, you then become available to hear these internal urges and to trust them. So as far as I can experience in my life right now, that's really the only way, because my little head, my Mercury-driven head, has been trying to figure out how to do things for a long time, and it doesn't really get me very far. What gets me somewhere is actually taking action toward making something. For now, the essential thing is what does it take for you to be able to stay with however the divine discontent manifests for you. And a question that I love that Cynthia Bourgeault said once, paraphrase, it was something like, she asked, "How do you scatter?" Become familiar with how you scatter, how you fall apart, how you begin to fray at the edges before you lose your temper, take the drugs, run screaming from your studio. How do I scatter? And find ways of working with that. If you are prone to the levels of anxiety and restlessness and agitation that I am, you need to come, as I did the other night on the rooftop. First I painted, and then in the painting there was lots of physical movement, and then it was just physical movement, and then I came into stillness. And that was the whole process of coming back into relationship with myself and coming back into relationship with my state of mind as it was shifting and changing, because these states of mind are always shifting and changing. And as long as we are receptive to that and keep returning to that, it ensures that we'll never become completely mired in one state of mind. Because if you are mired, there's a certain repetition of a storyline that's happening, because energy moves, life moves. So that's it for today.